Hi, and welcome to Concussion Talk Podcast. I'm Nick Mercer. This is episode 38 of the podcast, and today I'm talking to Harrison Brown. Harrison is the CEO and founder of HeadCheck Health, a Vancouver-based company. And actually, Harrison was on this podcast in November of 2015, so 3.5 years ago, and 3 years and 5 months ago. And I'll get Harrison now to actually introduce himself, talk about just what he remembers from he talked about what he was talking about when he was last on here, and to introduce to you his company and tell you about what they're doing, and the great product they're developing. So, Harrison, please go ahead.
Great, thanks, Nick. I'm really excited to join you again. And I think we were just kind of joking around that the last time I did this was, as you mentioned, almost 4 years ago. And I think I was doing it from a hotel room in Quebec City when I was working with the UBC football team doing concussion research. So it's great to chat again, and good to catch up and kind of joke about kind of what's happened in the last period of time that we spoke. But yeah, just to, I guess, bring you up to date on kind of what happened there was we were doing concussion research with the UBC football team where there was kind of two goals to it. One of them was we had, certain players wearing mouth guards that had impact sensors in them. And we wanted to quantify over the course of a season, including all practices and games, what was the amount of trauma that players were receiving.
Yeah, actually, if I can quote myself from doing my own blog here, I said, you've been researching the link between a player's brain function and the number and magnitude of the hits sustained. Is that about it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it was a cool study. So we were collecting impacts from certain players, and so we did it for a number of years. But basically, we had players wearing mouth guards every single practice, every single game for a whole season, and so we obviously given the assumptions and error rates that go into those technologies, we were able to really quantify how much head trauma players were getting over the course of a season. And obviously it differed between position, it differed between if you were a starter versus a backup. But that was kind of the first part of the study, which was really interesting. And then the second part to it was we were collecting weekly tests for concussion. So we were kind of using this battery of the gold standard stuff plus some novel things that people were developing, and we wanted to see kind of, first off, did any of these tests change after a certain amount of head impact exposure, and also was there a way, if you knew that somebody was receiving a certain impact or a combination of impacts, whether there would be an effect on those scores.
Right, and that's So your findings are, you mentioned you're right now it's not on, so they're still technically doing your PhD on a bit of a leave from it now. Where you're doing your company, but how did that lead to your now HeadCheck Health and your new company you started?
I mean, they're all interconnected in some way or another. One of the things that we developed when I was doing research was, this new balance sensor that was going to, give sideline people and medical staff a better way to quantify balance. And at that point in time, balance was considered, a really important indicator of concussion severity and the injury itself. And so we kind of came up with that as, what we were going to go to market with, and saying, hey, we know the current way that even in the NFL they measure balance is they have a trainer stand in front of the player and count the number of errors they make, and so it's very unreliable because it depends on how the scorer interprets the data. If you have two trainers scoring the same person at the same time, they might come up with a different result and then make a different decision. Right. So we came up with this sensor that was going to, essentially quantify the balance of the athlete very accurately. And yeah, we started with that, and that kind of rolled out of the lab, and then this company HeadCheck started. and we, we gave it to teams, and they said, this is great, this is amazing, but balance is really only a small part of what we have to do. We've got to do cognition testing. My buddy down the street on another team, he uses a different test.
Right.
And so it became very apparent to us that they're really, if you want to have an impact and you want to, be a widespread tool that's adopted, you can't really just have one tool or one test. You've got to be almost a jack of all trades. And so that's really where we took off, and we took the positioning of, well, how about we just give them a tool that's very flexible, that they can customize, and they can choose whatever it is that they want to do.
They being the team, you mean?
They being the medical staff. So for example, let's say, we're a team and you're the head doctor for our team. You might decide that all the other tests out there are garbage and we should be doing, the NIC test. Okay. And so when our team and our trainers and our athletic therapists and our physios, whenever they log in, they're going to have to run NICS test. And that might be very different than, a test that UBC football would be doing.
Right. Okay. And so now, this product, can you just, if you want to just describe what your new product does, what it is, like what you're now producing,
Sure.
Developing.
Yeah, so it's essentially what a head check is it's kind of almost like a universal concussion tool, in the sense that it can work for any team, it can work for any level of play, and the reason why it's able to do that is because it's completely customized to, the level of play, the protocol, the sport, and also the education level of the person that's using it. So, for example, if a higher level team with a doctor or a neuropsychologist, if they pick it up, they can customize it so that they're using tests that are applicable to doctors and neuropsychs. Now, if a parent picks it up, we think it would be completely unethical and inappropriate for somebody not educated to be using the same tests. And so what we do through our process is, we qualify, what credentials do you have? What's your level of education? And what do the current laws and protocols suggest would be appropriate for you to do? And so what happens is, somebody might go on their phone and open up HeadCheck and click Perform Test. And without them even knowing, they might be given a completely different experience, a completely different set of tests and procedures than somebody else. And so really what we're trying to do is we're trying to enforce these recommendations and best practice principles that really haven't really been enforced. And what we find is, at every level of sport we go into, there's people that are just blatantly going against, some of our Canadian concussion guidelines and best practice.
Right. So what protocols and best practices do you set for your product, or do you go by what a certain league standards are, or a team standards, or however they want to define their best practices? Are they league wide or nationwide or sport wide or international?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's really a collaborative effort with the organizations that we work with. In general, I would say we cater towards them in terms of, what are the policies you have in place in your current league, and kind of what happened was maybe 10 years ago when everybody started getting freaked out about concussions, the first thing that organizations did was they raced to come up with these policies. And so every single organization would have this policy, and this policy would be, based off of, parachute stuff or, some of the other groups out there. And it would say, hey, concussions are really, really serious. And so as a result, we're going to do these different things to keep the athlete safe. And so it might be we do A, B, and C. And, what happened was the commissioners or the directors or the presidents, they would come up with these, policies that they really had no visibility into whether they could follow them or whether they were following them. And so what happened was, they came out with these policies and nobody really follows them, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so what happens is there's a complete mismatch between what organizations say they're doing and what they're actually doing. And so part of the reason why we exist is we provide a very, very easy framework to figure that out. And so what happens is the league tells us, hey, our policy requires us to do A, B, and C. And we go, okay, great. Well, here's a tool that you can use to customize to the exact specifications to do A, B, and C. And then what we do is regularly over the course of that season, we go back to them and we provide them with tools to basically figure out, well, are you actually doing A, B, and C? And I think it's a really, really cool idea in that, we're helping organizations find issues before they become a problem, and we can fix them. And so an example of that would be, depending on the state or the province or the country even, clearance is probably one of the bigger issues that we face, right?
Sorry, what is there? Clearance?
Yeah, medical clearance. So if you are deemed to be concussed or suspected of concussed, a lot of policies will call for a physician clearance, and some of them will, even in the United States, for example, they'll call for athletic trainer clearance or physiotherapist clearance. But nobody has any visibility right now into how it's actually being done. And so over the last 4 years, because we've worked with a lot of these organizations, we now understand a bit better, well, how is it actually being done? I think everybody hears these stories about, parents trying to clear their kids on their own because the scouts are in the room, or coming back after seeing, a medical professional that's maybe not qualified and presenting that letter. And so I think there's a trade-off between ticking the box as to, what your policy asks you to do and doing what's best practice, and sometimes they don't align.
Right, actually that kind of goes well into your, if you go to headcheck health/education, you have education section of your company's website. That talks about, it's very invaluable for people to read about what the protocols are for memory, for behavior changes and physical issues. And also, we also,
on that website, we also have a list that we keep up to date of the latest free resources for education. Right. And we've taken the standpoint in our company that being educated on concussions, whether you're a doctor or an athlete, you should not have to pay for that. That should be something that should be freely available. And there's great organizations out there, here in Canada and in Parachute and, the Concussion Legacy Foundation. And there's so many good groups that have this information available. And the idea of people having to pay for education or training on this stuff, I think, needs to be changed. I know the Canadian government obviously is putting their efforts into educating the general public on concussions now, and I think hopefully that will fix it. But I think everybody should be educated on it, and they shouldn't have to pay for it.
Yeah, right. Excellent. That's a very good point. And you're on that same education page. There's a return to sport strategy and a return to school strategy, and then you say learn more. You have step 1, 2, 3, up to 6 for sport, and up to 4. Is it 4 for school? Where did you get these? Where did you get these steps? I know where you get these steps. I followed them, but you can tell me.
Yeah, they're just they're adapted from other organizations, and again, like the way that our return to play and return to sport works is, again, it's up to the organization. So if an organization decides that they want 15 steps or they want 3 steps, they can obviously run both of those easily in our system. But those are just infographics that we've made from kind of the best practice stuff that makes it a bit easier to understand. And the reason being is that, those are, they're just really pretty in the sense that you could print them out, put them on the wall in the locker room. A kid could read it. And again, like we're just trying to make this stuff more accessible, and again, like the education on what those policies are and what they mean, needs to be free. And so sometimes we try to put out content ourselves that makes it a bit easier. And if you look at the return to play protocols or policies or steps that are out there from from other groups, sometimes they're tough to interpret because it's a lot of words, or maybe some of the words the general public wouldn't understand. And so we just try to, when we're able to, and when we think it's helpful, try to help translate some of that stuff so that it actually can get used and people can get educated easier.
Right. And if people want to click on the learn more links at the end of those return to school strategies, they take you to the concussion. What's it now called? The consensus on concussion, the sport concussion consensus.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think those are great documents. They're great information, and I think we want to support those groups as much as we can. And I think we're all trying to work towards the same goal here. And kind of as we talked about earlier, the last time we spoke being almost 4 years ago, if we kind of wind back as to what the world looked like at that time, I would say it actually looked pretty different.
It did, yeah.
I think the awareness has come a long way. It still has a lot to go, but I think, even from my experience of being a researcher at the time, the first year we ran that study, it was tough to recruit subjects because they didn't want to be assessed for concussions. They didn't want to have data that could maybe, determine that they're out of the game or anything like that. And so I think if we fast forward to now, I think it's very different in the way that even at UBC, the players look at it in that, they're interested in the data. They want to know what the numbers mean. And so, I think the awareness has come a long way, and certainly in the tech world, tools are now being made like ours, where it's a very niche product. We're trying to help teams be compliant with their policies, and we're trying to make it easier to keep players safe. And I think that's very different than some other technologies that are out there that are trying to develop new tests, new types of tests. Biomarkers, all this kind of cool stuff. And I think everybody's kind of working towards the same goal here. And I think that's what we're excited about.
Is there any sport or league that you think is doing something new or something that's maybe that should be looked at a bit more about their just in general, or just it's doing something good?
Sure. I would say one of our clients is the Canadian Junior Hockey League. And that's basically junior A hockey across Canada. So there's a league or two or three in every province, and it's kind of the top level of junior hockey. And one of the cool things that they're doing is this year they decided to use head check across the entire league. So you've got about so you've got about 133 teams across Canada, all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast. And one of the really cool things about it is, and maybe a lot of people don't know this, but the amount of transactions and trades that occur in junior hockey is astounding. So you've got 15 or 16.
I didn't know that.
Well, you got 16-year-old kids that are literally being traded from Halifax to Vancouver Island, and they're going and living with a new family. They're going to a new high school. The trade deadline's in January, and so it might be right before their exams. So it's crazy, and I think there's a lot of complications that happen when you're a high level athlete like that. And one of the things that was occurring was the way that concussions were being documented and how that information flowed from one team to the next was not standardized.
Was that data being lost?
I don't think it was. I honestly think it would be lost. I think it just would never leave. So what would happen is, let's say your team in Halifax was using Nick's test, and you got traded to somewhere on Vancouver Island. You might show up at your new team, and they might never get access to the results. But also, maybe they don't use Nick's test. Maybe they use
Harrison's test.
Harrison's test, exactly. And so even if the data did transfer, it wouldn't even be helpful. And also, what might happen is your team in Halifax might have access to, a collaborative, multifaceted clinic in that area that has a neuropsychologist, a very well trained athletic therapist, a neurologist, and then you move to Vancouver Island, and you might have an equipment manager that is tasked with executing that policy. And so what I'm trying to explain is that we realized there was huge differences across this league. And so the first task that we had was really trying to quantify, well, where are the differences? What are ones that we can address through technology? And so the transferring the data thing was obviously very easy. So now the way it happens in that league is if you're traded from Halifax to Vancouver Island, before your plane even lands, that trainer on the new team has access to your data. So there's never going to be a time in that league now where you're playing a game and somebody in the building doesn't have access to your file of concussion data, which I think is really cool.
That's very important, yeah. So just one last question on the technology aspect. Is your like the old technology kind of oxymoron, but your technology you went to market with first, right, J-Health, is that still something that can be used by sports teams or by you or any other say researchers? Are they using your technology that you had presented first?
Yeah, no, it's still alive. It's still it's still being used. So we have that being used right now in research studies mostly. So researchers are doing it, and kind of the main reason why researchers like it is when you're doing a study like, for example, the one that we did, and for a full season we followed around the football team and tested every player once a week. I think we had 4 people. I think we had 1 PhD, 2 master students, and then some undergrad, basically volunteers. And the amount of time that it took us to collect the data was just astronomical. It was just so difficult, and it was a great experience, but it was, we almost killed ourselves, and our number of subjects and the amount of data we got was great, but it's not a multi-centered study and all kind of stuff. So I think the reason why researchers like this balance tool is that it provides a really easy way to collect the balance data without having to, have somebody there that's knowledgeable in some sort of computer programming and LabVIEW. And so it is still alive. In terms of teams using it, we're still determining kind of where the best fit is. I think in some cases it might be really useful. For example, high level elite clinics that can make use of the data, or really elite sports medicine teams that can really make use of it. But I think there is a lot of the market probably where it wouldn't be useful. If you've got an older team and there's, let's say, an equipment manager there, and the league has not required them to put a medical professional in place, it probably wouldn't help, to be honest, because it wouldn't be appropriate to have somebody that's not qualified, look and analyze that data anyway. So, you've got to have the right people in place to make use of high-level technologies like that, and I think, we're hoping in the future everybody will, but right now it's probably a very small part of our customer base.
Right, but your software is doing well. Is there anything else about your software? Anything else you're excited about new for your software that you're looking to, or?
I think one of the things that we're really kind of looking forward to is right now we're building a lot of partnerships in the space. So other companies that make tests, stats companies, these types of folks. Yeah. And I think if we look at the development of the concussion technology space, if you want to call it that, I I think the way it's going to go is there's going to be a couple of groups that really work collaboratively and they focus on what they're good at. And head check, we're good at making an easy tool to use.
Yeah.
We're good at helping people
You're
understand
knowledgeable.
where, yeah, and understand where they're not maybe compliant with what they say they are, and helping them fix that. But there are definitely better people that are developing, for example, biomarkers, and we're just simply not experts in that area, and we probably never will be. So our goal is to really find those experts and teams and companies that are doing great stuff in other parts of the concussion problem, and rather than having HeadCheck try to take everything on itself, is collaboratively working with those folks, and that includes researchers and subject matter experts as well.
Oh, great. This is awesome. So, thank you so much. This was a great chat. Is there any way that people want to find out more about HeadCheck Health? How can they find you or reach you online?
They can go to the website. It's just headcheckhealth.com. You can find everything there. We do have an app in the Google and Google and Apple app stores, and you can download it for free, and you can use it for free. If you want to register and get some of the additional services, then that's where you go to our website and contact us.
Okay, and you're on what social media? Twitter,
Yeah, so
Facebook?
Twitter is at Hedrick Health. We have a new Instagram page, which I'm terrible with, but we have much smarter people working on it. So we just started Instagram,
Okay,
and obviously Facebook and LinkedIn as well.
great. Well, thank you so much, Harrison. This was great to catch up after 3 years and 5 months, I believe. 3 years and 5 months, almost 2 years and 6 months, almost. Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. Though the concussion world, at least brain world, has changed a lot since just even then, even when I just started this podcast.
Yeah.
You were episode 9, and now
Wow.
this is episode 38, and in those 29 podcasts between, it's about 20 years. It's the world is definitely. I've noticed that there's been a noticeable shift in the way the information is gathered and the way it's interpreted. So
Absolutely.
it's exciting, I guess, in that sense, and hopeful anyway. So thank you so much.
No problem, Nick. I appreciate it, and hopefully it won't be another 3 years before I chat with you next again.
Let's hope not. Thanks.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Thank you again, Harrison. And please check out HeadCheck Health's website. It's got very good information there. And please check out my website at www.concussiontalk.com and check out my Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook pages. As I wrote in my last post, I would like to do more public speaking. So if you are interested, please contact me via my social media pages, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or via my website. Thank you very much. Thank you all for listening, and I hope to produce another podcast very soon. As always, music at the beginning of this podcast is by Ben Sound. www.bensound.com.